We work hard as physicians to take care of the health and well-being of our patients. But when it comes to our money, do we have the same condition of care? Probably not. Let's change that together. Welcome to the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast, where we'll fight and advocate for your financial literacy. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. Thanks for being here. Let's jump into the show. This week's episode is sponsored by CityVest. CityVest has quickly become the most popular and best way for doctors to invest in top-performing real estate private equity funds that are usually reserved for institutional investors. This unique access to investing in these institutional funds is available for the first time ever through CityVest's easy and secure online investment platform. CityVest does the hard work of conducting due diligence and vetting the investments. They even get a third-party due diligence report that is posted on their website. As a result of aggregating a several million-dollar investment amount into their access funds, CityVest gains access to investing in the institutional investment and is able to negotiate better investment terms such as a 12% preferred return. You can check them out at cityvest.com or go to the link in the show notes below. So welcome everybody to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, we started out with physician guests and physician listeners, and the brand and reach has expanded. So now we have business owners, investors, entrepreneurs, both as guests and as listeners. So hopefully both parties can benefit. And we talk about 4 different types of freedom: financial, time, location, emotional freedom. So today I'm very happy to introduce to you Kim Lebbing. And she's a business owner and success mind coach. And she's going to tell you all about her work and how she helps clients get unstuck. So Kim, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. No, we had met through Podmatch and we were talking backstage, and really you have some really interesting ideas and perspectives that I'd like the listeners to take away from. So tell us more about your background, your bio, and we'll go from there.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm a success and mindset coach. I have my background is in neurolinguistics. I really fell in love with it some years ago. Over 22 years ago, I started out as a business owner, and it was both freeing and also frustrating at the same time. I learned really quickly that my biggest obstacle was myself. And I literally spent years trying to help myself get better and get past the inconsistency and procrastination and some of the thoughts that we have, as business owners and entrepreneurs in our heads. And I ran across this system, was introduced to it by a friend, and fell in love with it because it was the only thing that actually worked and that stuck. So I didn't have to keep revisiting or remembering. It actually changed the way I was thinking, and it stuck and it worked. And so I became obsessed and got a whole lot of certifications in this area. So that's kind of how I got started.
Oh, interesting. We'll talk about all about that. I find NLP is really interesting. It's kind of like how you use language and tie it to your emotions and thoughts and to produce tangible outcomes. So we'll talk about what some of the resources a little bit later, but we'll just start with how successful people think and how is it different just from the mainstream.
Oh gosh. Where do I start with that? I think, that even for me, because I came from the corporate world. And so I'll just tell you how I was. You don't think about as much when you're working for someone about your personal growth. But if you're in sales or you're an entrepreneur, you become painfully aware that whatever is going on up here, that your thoughts affect everything else. It affects your sales. It affects your ability to move forward. And the more you're in your head, It'll literally stop you. And one of the things that I talk to people about is how your relationships at home and even past, how it affects what you do today. It affects your behaviors. It affects your decisions and every single piece.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. I was reading an article the other day talking about strife in the family, and it's better to have less strife and a more supportive spouse, and that way you can help eliminate distraction, help you focus. So that was quite enlightening. So let's talk about okay, so when you talk about minds, so what did you have to overcome to get where you are now?
So I'll tell you a little bit of my history. So growing up, I grew up in a home. My parents were really, really young when they got married, and kind of grew up. They themselves grew up in a rough situation. So I was in a home that my dad was very verbally abusive. And I struggled in school. I struggled through, socially, it struggled in relationships. And that's probably the biggest piece that I had to overcome. One thing I like to share though is this, by the same token, I also got, so I had these things, these negative things that happened to me, but also I learned he was a farmer. I'm a very hard worker because I saw what he does. I've also, my entrepreneurial bug that I got from both my parents, my mom and my dad. So there was a lot of positive, but when I was going through it, I didn't see it that way. And it wasn't until later in overcoming those things and really getting past them that I was able to see the good. And that is the secret to moving on past things, is learning the lesson.
I like that, learning the lesson. And I think one of my mentors, he was saying that life is happening for you and not to you. And what if your worst day was your greatest gift? So it's interesting to think about that in terms of that perspective.
We hope you don't mind this brief interruption from one of our affiliates. Today's affiliate is studentloanadvice.com. StudentLoanAdvice.com is a company powered by the White Coat Investor that specializes in helping professional students such as doctors, dentists, and other healthcare professionals navigate the complex and oftentimes confusing student loan landscape. They offer a consultation as well as services to help you save money when consolidating and paying back your student loans through their different options. You can go to their website, studentloanadvice.com/FFFP. That's again, studentloanadvice.com/FFFP to find out more, get signed up on their email list, or schedule a call with Andrew Paulson. Now back to our show.
It's really interesting because you have a journey, and then you've gone through this process of self-growth and development. What are some of the hidden barriers that hold people back?
Oh gosh. So things that people don't think about. A lot of times people will think that, well, the reason I'm not moving forward or the reason I'm not getting to this next level, they think it's something very surface level. And if you can imagine like an iceberg, I know you've seen these analogies, and we look at the stuff that's above the surface, but our subconscious is the 90% that's below it that people don't even see and you don't even know. And then what we end up doing is we try and solve subconscious problems with conscious level efforts. And that's what I did with did you get that?
Yeah.
So because I literally did that for years. So I thought I had, you hear about imposter syndrome, or, I'm struggling with just even procrastination or inconsistency. Any of those things, they're very surface level. They're not the real problem. And when you can get below that surface, that's really, really, that's where that's where you can really make change at a subconscious level. And then you don't have to keep trying to do stuff
Uh-huh.
that you like consciously or subconsciously, they're not aligned. Because once you fix those, they're fixed and
Yeah.
you don't have to keep trying so hard.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When you alluded to the statement you made when you were talking about where you're trying to solve unconscious problems with conscious, and then and then there's a surface level where you can't get below that. Describe some like that's really fascinating. Describe some examples where you were able to, for example, like procrastination or other or really imposter syndrome too. How what are some examples that you can get beneath that surface and start to affect change?
Sure. I'll talk about actually one of my past clients I had that she had struggled with, she said imposter syndrome. She said it was fear of success. And her struggle in her business was that she wanted to hire a team. She wanted to expand and grow her business, and she just wasn't able to. She was still a little bit in the solo. She had a couple of employees, but a little more in the solopreneur space, and just not able to expand. And what I do, I have a series of questions that I ask. And so we really drilled down to what the real problem was. And one of the questions I ask is, how is that a problem? So if it's fear of success, how is that a problem? And you keep drilling down. And for her, it ended up being trust. And yeah, I mean, you can see right away that, if you don't trust, it's really hard to hire people. It's really hard to make decisions, even trusting yourself. And this is stuff that she had thought she worked through years and years and years ago, stuff that happened in her past. And I think she was a teenager when something fairly traumatic had happened to her. And she had, she thought she resolved it, but neurologically, she was still playing through that old pattern. And then once she fixed it, she skyrocketed it. I mean, her business really skyrocketed after fixing that problem. And that very big first step was finding that underlying problem. And for her, it was trust. And I find that that's a common one for people that want to grow and haven't been able to. There's a trust issue.
Oh, interesting. Wow. That's really, that's gained a lot of insight. So it usually boils down to some emotional or traumatic event in the past, and then issues with, like control or, trust or some underlying issue tied to an emotional need, which really fascinating.
Yeah. And I will say that it's not always traumatic. And that is a trick, because sometimes it's something really what you think is really insignificant. Because when we are, those years from 0 to 7, when we're in those imprint years, all the people that are significant in our lives that we're around, they may have said something in front of us, or, or maybe we observed a behavior that they did. And that, even if it's not traumatic, imprints on us, and it affects our behaviors later.
Yeah. And as your coach, you mentioned coaching. What mistakes do business owners and entrepreneurs commonly make when it comes to reaching their next level of success?
So I said something about imposter syndrome, but I think that a lot of times people will get to the next level and then they have a whole new set of new problems that maybe they didn't, because you just don't know, because you haven't been there before. So that balancing their work life with their family life. And again, I don't know if true balance really happens, but how you perceive it, and eliminating the guilt of, oh, I'm working on my business. I'm feeling guilty about, if I work on my business, I feel guilty about not, neglecting my family or my friends, or
Mhm.
vice versa. So there's that. That's definitely a mistake. And then also, when they get to that next level, not really seeing themselves in that new role.
Mhm.
And then sometimes they end up trailing back. They end up slipping right back into old behaviors. And that's because they didn't fix the underlying problems. So it's like the gym, the gym in January, and
Uh-huh.
everybody goes and they're all like fired up to keep going to the gym. And then a few weeks in, like everybody's gone, but literally that's
Uh-huh.
all these people that think they're going to turn over a new leaf, they're running these subconscious programs that
Mhm.
were never addressed. And that is why they slip back into old behavior.
Oh, yeah, that's quite interesting. Yeah, I love the analogy of the 2 week New Year's resolution, and then after that, it's all the gym is empty. So, um, yeah. So let's talk about I know you were coming. You talked about a lot about like resources, getting people started. What were some of the resources that helped you help others overcome and break through barriers?
So I go through a set of, I'm really big on set of questions as far as resources go. And I have some downloads on my website that people can access if they want those.
Mhm.
But asking yourself questions and taking that time, pull
Mhm.
out a journal. So you've found an area in your business or in your life, business and relationships, it's all related. Identify what the problem is and then start asking more questions. So what is the real problem? What is this? So what is this affecting? What other areas of life is it affecting? Because when you can drill that down, that's when you're starting to get below the surface. And that's when you can make the change. Because once you're aware of it, it's no longer subconscious.
Yeah,
And you've brought it up here to the conscious level.
yeah,
And that's when you can really tackle it and change it.
yeah. And then you also talk about your unique 4-hour rapid results process in that helps clients rapidly shift minds and ignites motivation and helps them to take massive action. So tell us more about that.
Oh, sure. So that's my own program. So I told you in the beginning, I was really obsessed with this process. And so I got a lot of different certifications from different places.
Uh-huh.
And so the first time I had gone through this process, I had a friend who had gone through it, and she took me through a 1-day process. And
Mhm.
in 1 day, she fixed things that I had struggled with literally for years. So that's what really motivated me to get Seek training. And so I put together a combination of strategies using NLP techniques and evolved NLP techniques, neuro-linguistic programming.
Mhm.
And I put together this 4-hour process, and it's literally 4 hours. And we identify the problem, we discover what caused it, and we pull that sucker out by the roots so that it doesn't keep happening again. And then I've got another process where I get people into action on whatever it is their goal. So if you think of a computer, you remove the virus. So a computer that's moving slow, you remove the virus. And then once the virus is removed, you can upload a new program, and then you can see massive action. So it really is 4 hours too. Some people ask me that, is it divided up? Is it 4 weeks? And I'm like, no, it really is it's a 4-hour block, and we just fix it in half a day.
Mm. And what sort of results have you seen with clients that have actually gone through this process?
Thank you. So I have a client who I mentioned earlier. So she ended up increasing her sales by 68%
Wow.
it was under 90 days. It was just a little over 60 days, under 90 days that she did this. And she was the one that struggled with trust. I have another client that struggled with inconsistency. He ended up taking a business to over $1 million in a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was same thing. He had stuff that he thought he resolved, but he hadn't. It was the old program that was running. And then I work with sales teams too. And I've got one team I'm working with now that they knock on doors. They have it's a really tough mindset thing. And I've helped them with personal issues and going through divorces and things from the past. And every single one of them are meeting their goals, every single one. So it works. I've never had it not work, to be honest.
Yeah. It's been a really fascinating conversation. I really love your energy and your vibe, and really talking about just the mental, psychological barriers that prevent us from becoming our full selves and reaching our full potential. So I know a lot of listeners and the audience are interested in learning more about you, visiting your website, or even working with you. So how can they do that?
Oh, absolutely. So you can connect with me on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Kimberly Lebbing. I'm on Facebook. And then you can go to my website, KimberlyLebbing.com. I have webinars on there that are free. I've got free downloads. You can sign up for any one of those, and I'd be happy to connect.
Yeah. Thanks so much. We really enjoyed this conversation, and we look forward to hearing more about your future successes.
Thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
I'm excited that you made it for another episode. You are truly the best. If you've been following the show for a while, you know that my passion is to bring you the education you need to find your path to financial freedom. Please come back week after week for new content, new resources, and great guests. Until then, if you haven't already, please be sure to check out the website, www.drchrislewmdphd.com, for more support. I'll see you next week.